Alright, we're not talking media today, but we're still doing a devil's advocate, which is probably going to be the majority of them since the Sacred Cow barbecues are a bit more subjective. After all, so long as they're not claiming something is objectively good, it doesn't really matter if someone likes something that's bad. But people who dislike something that's good almost always are insisting that it's objectively bad. Because the sheer idea that you simply don't like something is foreign on the internet today. But we'll be talking about immortality! And before I get to the video I'll be talking about, let's get the socioeconomic thing out of the way. Because it gets kind of political, and I don't intend to actually, focus on that. One of the socioeconomical things that I hear argued is that if we have immortality, the elderly will never leave their older positions. They will never leave their positions at the top of the food chain, and therefore there will be no mobility anywhere. Well, okay, but the entire pursuit of money and getting a better job and holding on to that job is because you want to have enough money to take care of yourself when you can no longer work, to aid yourself when you hit your elderly years. And that's your philosophy of life, that's fine. But if you're never going to get old, there really is no concern of that. The reason people can't restart their position or go to a new job is because they're going to be too old to learn a new field. It'll have been too long, there's not enough time left in their life to get to somewhere comfortable and capable in an entirely new field. There's no point in restarting. In a video game, I'll restart from the starting point because it's fun to try out something new. Because I want to do something different, or maybe try an old build that I did before, and just, do that again. Or maybe I'll just do something passionate and fuck around for 8 years instead of actually finishing the quests. You can't do that in real life because there's a time limit on your life. The ever-encroaching countdown to 0 of your life will keep you moving forward, and it does not allow you to look back, restart, or pursue a passion unless it can somehow make you money or make you successful. So I believe that immortality would 100% fix this issue, because it would inspire people to be more about what they want to do and less about what they have to do before their time clock hits 0. But there's a lot of videos explaining why, you don't want it. And the one we'll be talking about today is by Because Science, which is interesting because they don't seem to follow a huge amount of science. Actually, I very much would like to live forever.
Do you really want to live forever?
Yes.
Theoretically, it does sound awesome. First, how should we define immortality? Well, the simplest and most straightforward definition of immortality would be that if you are immortal, you are exempt from death. Why does it have to be so spooky? But this version of immortality, especially in pop culture, usually comes with other superpowers like invulnerability, which is a whole nother thing. So for this analysis, we are going to instead focus on the most realistic version of immortality, biological immortality.
Good, because that's what I'm hoping for. Everything else is a bit unrealistic, but we'll go into that as well. When you do.
You could theoretically live forever because you don't age, but you can still meet your end by other means. Here is a simulation by data visualization website PolStats. What they wanted to figure out is how human life expectancy would change if you removed all of the natural age-related causes of death. So no heart disease, no cancer. Only ways to die would be getting struck by lightning, which is very unlikely, or falling off a ladder. And what they found is that if you remove all of these natural causes of death, leaving only the unlikely ones like biological immortality would, the human life expectancy jumps to around 9,000 years. Yes, living 100 times longer would be extremely significant. I'm not arguing that. I'm arguing that this is not exactly immortality, is it? It's just 8,000 to 9,000 years.
Yeah, but biological immortality never promised eternity. Even with some kind of eternity promised, there isn't an eternity in time. In theory, total entropic collapse of all energy in the universe means that you're going to end eventually. So the fact that the time limit is really far away doesn't really change it. Immortality is unachievable based on the fact that everything will end. But if you in some way are breaking the law of entropy, then that opens up an entirely new field of the fact that, well, maybe they could run an entire universe off of you, since you break the laws of entropy and generate power from nowhere. But that's magical immortality. We'll get to that later.
And it also means that when you meet your end, it's gonna be through one of these unlikely ways, and it is not gonna be pleasant.
There are people who meet their end by these means now. Why would I intentionally shorten my life? It's all up to random chance. I'm not a big fan of absolutism in a lot of things, but in this particular case, you don't know that you will eventually die, especially with advancements in medical technology potentially finding other ways to save you. But we're still not at you don't want it, because living for 8,000 years followed by an agonizing death in a house fire is still better than living only 90 years followed by death by cancer or something else. This isn't an argument against immortality. The argument that you're going to die unpleasantly doesn't make any sense. You're going to die unpleasantly anyway because there is no pleasant way to die. Oh, he passed on quietly in his sleep. Yeah, cool. Or he could have lived for another 2,000 years and then been shot by someone. Take your pick. I'll choose 2,000 years.
And I'm not just putting some weird check on biological immortality either. Nature does this too. For example, langosta do not experience cellular senescence. Their cells never stop dividing, and therefore they could theoretically be as reproductively fit as they want to forever and grow in size forever. And yet, when we look in the oceans, we do not see mega langosta everywhere. They are still susceptible to disease and predation, and as they get larger, it takes more and more energy to molt their shells. Eventually, they run out of that energy and die in their shells. Any kind of realistic biological immortality will still be subjected to nature's checks and balances, and therefore cannot be true immortality.
What the actual fuck are you talking about? Nature's checks and balances? I thought your channel's name was Because Science and you're invoking the fucking wrath of Tafiti. Nature does not have a will or an intent for things to die. That's not part of nature's intent. Things survive because they have something that makes them survive. The reason bunnies will die at almost everything, are eaten by almost everything, and die really easily to disease is because they reproduce super easy. The reason tortoises live so long is because the older ones got to mate more, and therefore made more of them. Humans' adaptability was intelligence, finding ways to alter yourselves and the things around you in order to make yourselves live longer, as well as an incredible amount of endurance. If you find a way to survive biologically forever, you won't continue to grow forever. That's not how human biology works. Also, he went over the whole, things can eat them again thing, but I skipped that because it's not important. Nature's intent is that the thing that survives the best or produces the best will continue to survive and produce better. Using your intelligence to extend your life is exactly what humans have always been doing. That's why you're the dominant species on the planet. You mentioned that earlier in this video. You have doubled the lifespan of humans because of technology. Not to mention because of science and the ability to adapt, to improve yourself and your area for survival. Going even further beyond that, nature isn't going to stop you. Fucking Tafiti isn't going to climb out of the ocean and smash humanity into the ground for humanity daring to violate her grand plan. In fact, you could argue that becoming biologically sustainable indefinitely is the end goal of all evolution. All evolution is towards the most successful species, whatever that may be. If you make a species that can replicate itself indefinitely, eating any kind of material but dying in a week, it will become strong. If you make a species that can live forever and continue reproducing forever, then it will become strong, especially if it's intelligent too. This is the most unscientific thing I've ever heard someone speak. Nature didn't nerf the lobster. The lobster has simply gained the ability not to die from aging. Given enough time, in theory, the lobster would develop an end cap on its ability to grow. Any lobster that developed such a mutation would be able to mate much more, assuming it didn't become dinner to someone. And therefore, their species would slowly but surely be replaced by the ones that live forever. Your theory here makes no sense.
Now, I know what many of you are probably thinking right now, but Kyle, even if realistic immortality isn't forever, I'd still take 9,000 years over my typical lifespan. Let's say that we did conquer death. We figured out how to upload our minds to computers, or we solved all of the big problems with cryonics. this still comes along with serious, life-changing existential problems. The biggest criticism that you'll hear is that if you are completely immortal, you will have to bear witness to every single person that you know, love, or care about passing away.
What the fuck are you talking about? If the age cap has been conquered, why the fuck would all of my loved ones be passing away? If it's just due to accident, well, I'd probably have to see them pass away in same random fashion now. And you're still talking potentially hundreds, if not thousands of years with them that I would not get otherwise. Why on earth would I be the only one with immortality? I do want to live forever. This is the weirdest thing. Everyone always says, well, if we live forever, then we'll outlive everyone else, or we'll outlive everything we love. You'll find new things to love. You will move on in life. Every child will eventually outlive their parents. That's just how it is. Now imagine if we were ageless and that didn't have to be the case. Again, you have not mentioned any reason why we wouldn't want to be looking for living forever. And I know he's talking about a particular superpower, but right now he's talking about biological immortality. That is the ability to stop aging. He even said, let's say you're injected by a syringe that stops your aging, or something like that. Well, then we clearly have a serum. Why aren't we doing it more? Why is everyone not getting it?
And would there be a point to doing and seeing potentially everything if you're going to forget a lot of it?
Yes.
A rudimentary estimate for how much storage space our brains can hold is around 2.5 petabytes. It is not infinite. And from behavioral studies, we know an important part of living life and experiencing and learning is forgetting. The point is that your brain prioritizes some information and remembers it and deletes other information or forgets it. If one of the supposed benefits of immortality, complete immortality, is accumulating all the life experience that you couldn't get in just one normal human lifetime, then this is not evolved to deal with unlimited experience if there is some finite amount that you can remember and then therefore you have to forget everything else.
I mean, this completely ignores the idea of cybernetic or biological alteration to increase your memory, but we'll continue where we are.
It is a serious, non-obvious endpoint to this supposed benefit.
What? The idea that you'll forget everything and therefore it's not worth it also doesn't make any sense. You'll forget everything from your childhood, but it's still worth growing up. You'll forget everything from your teens, or at least a lot of it, and it's still worth going through and continuing. The fact that you will forget things means that you can then go back and re-experience things. Things that you might have experienced before, but forgot. Meaning that you won't actually run out of things that you want to do, as many people seem to think that you will. The fact that you will forget the past does not mean you should not move towards the future. I could get into the philosophy about how you should be moving forward as a people instead of clinging to the past. I'm not saying forget it. I'm not saying throw it out. I'm not saying give up on history. I'm saying that you should always be looking forward still. But that would be an entire other video.
For example, if you are living forever, your chances of contracting an incurable illness and being sick forever is 100%. If you knew this was going to happen if you became immortal, would you choose to become immortal?
Yes, because, one, I don't believe in absolute certainty, and two, there's no such thing as an incurable illness. If you have magic immortality, which is what you're talking about now, then that means that you will always get better. Meaning, in theory, you could just, completely destroy your body, and you'd just come back. Or if you're talking about invulnerability too, then your body can't be harmed by the illness, and the illness would die off inside you because it can't harm you. And since most diseases have to, at some point, use part of your body, then your immortality would likely prevent it from being able to damage you. You see, here's the problem with magic immortality. We haven't properly set up the rules, so it's really kind of up in the air as to whether any of your points actually make any sense.
Yale philosopher Shelley Kagan argues in his book Death that immortality would also lead to extreme boredom. An infinite life necessarily exhausts all potential experience well before that life is over, leading to extreme boredom. And if you forget because of our brains or some magical reason so much of that life that you are never bored, what was the point of even having that experience in the first place? In Kagan's view, death is actually a rescue from the unbearable tedium of immortality.
And we've circled back. No, that makes no sense. Just because you will forget everything, yes, it is still worth continuing. You will forget everything from your previous life as a child, but it's still worth continuing to adulthood. There are plenty of times I've re-experienced things that I've done before and still enjoyed it. The idea that you will eventually exhaust all enjoyment from it is a lie, and frankly, it's because there's an infinite amount of things to do in the universe. This does not mean that everything can be done, in theory, but this means that there's an infinite amount of things to do, and in an infinite life, you have an infinite amount of time to experience and try them. And again, if you forget it all, is it worth it? Yes! I've forgotten friends that I had in high school. I'm still glad that I had friends. Your life itself is a forgettable, insignificant blip in the grand scheme of the universe anyway, but you still insist on living it out?
Or just like, what if you fell into an abandoned mineshaft or an unbearable, uncaring void and you were stuck there for literally ever until the end of time and you just had to sit there all cramped?
Well, okay, so now we've established that you're indestructible in some way because your body would in some way continue existing forever. Well, yeah, no, being trapped under there forever would certainly be a problem. But of course you wouldn't be trapped under there forever because, as you pointed out, eventually you'd get to the point where you forgot the past. And eventually, you'd wake up anew with someone discovering you. Because under your own logic, eventually that would happen. The Earth won't be here forever, and you're indestructible under there, so it's not like the sun expanding will kill you. And you'll start a new life when you're discovered by a new sentient species, which according to you, is a 100% chance. I'll admit, the idea of indestructibility, perfect immortality stuck in a mineshaft does sound really bad, but it's worth the gamble, because there's still the odds that you won't, the overwhelming majority odds that you won't be involved in such an event.
Well, if you had a more realistic version of immortality, you wouldn't be truly immortal, and you'd be bound to die in some unlikely and very unpleasant way. And even if you were truly magically invulnerable and immortal, you'd have to deal with bigger philosophical and existential problems, like losing all of your loved ones, and your friends, and your family, and your memories, and your connections to society, and probably your will to live.
Just because you might have a bad experience does not mean you shouldn't try to live longer. On magical immortality, we don't have enough rules set out on how this would be achieved, so I'm not even going to address it. Because we don't know the rules of how it works, it's because magic. We don't have any clear definitions to it. So science doesn't really apply here, since we're not using science to do anything. But on scientific immortality, the fact that you will eventually die, or the existential problems, first of all, we still have existential problems with mortality. The fear of death is why so many people insist that mortality is a good thing, because they don't want to accept that they are doomed to die, and they don't want to deal with the fact that this means that there is no avoiding it. So instead, they warp it in their mind into thinking it's some kind of good thing that death eventually comes for you. It's not. We shouldn't be looking at death in a favorable light. I'm not saying that you should mourn someone forever, but that doesn't mean you should just accept death as an inevitable. CGP Grey did entire videos on this, and frankly, I like his content because he actually follows a logical progression of ideas. Because science here didn't seem to really adhere to science. I don't want to throw shade at his channel, especially since he's a much bigger channel than I am. But yes, I do want to live forever. I do want the power of immortality on a biological level. I do want to eliminate aging, because none of the reasons why I wouldn't make any sense. Well, because you might be killed. I might be killed now, because you'll forget things of the past. I'll forget things of the past now. Because your loved ones might die. My loved ones could die now. The only difference is that I might have more opportunity to experience other positive things. The idea that these bad things are weights that will pull you down forever is a very negative viewpoint. Just because you're going to have rough patches in infinitum because you'll have infinite life does not mean you shouldn't try to have good patches in infinitum as well. I refuse to accept the idea that mortality is a superpower or that we should be okay with the fact that we die. Anyone who argues that you shouldn't be looking for agelessness is missing the point of life. They're focusing too much on the bad, and frankly, they've missed the point of nature, adaptation, and the intelligence that we have in the first place. All of it points towards living longer and aspiring to live longer, to experience more and do more. And you can't do that if there's an end cap on your life with a clock constantly counting down. So yes, I do want to live forever. I want everyone to live forever. And while we might not actually factually live forever because death may eventually come for us in some other form, that doesn't mean we shouldn't remove aging as one of the reasons. If you truly believe that aging is perfectly natural and therefore we should keep it, then you should honestly be against any form of medicine or preventative treatment for trauma, because it's perfectly natural. It's perfectly natural for a saber-toothed tiger to come into your home and maul you to death. But you made doors. It's perfectly natural for you to die from a bad cut, but you made doctors. It's perfectly natural for you to die from an amoeba or some kind of parasite, but you made antibiotics. It's perfectly natural for you to die by a virus, but you made antivirals. It's perfectly natural for a human to die, but it's the entire point of your nature and intelligence that you avoid death at every possible turn. Aging is a possible death that we should be trying to avoid. Thanks for joining me here on Fair's Fair. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, feed the algorithm, and all the other things that the YouTube gods demand. And if you don't think that we should achieve immortality, feel free to go down to the comments. Let me know. I'd be happy to talk about it down there. Or if you just want to rage, then feel free to go down there as well. And remember to be entertainingly angry.